Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here and share my thoughts on cybersecurity, and I'm thankful to IDSA for the opportunity. Uh, we have just heard about one commons, that is the sea commons, which is probably the earliest one that mankind recognized, and there have been laws of the seas and many other things which have emerged on how to deal with the commons. And here we are now talking about another commons, which is slightly different in the sense that it is a man-made global commons, and whether it is global commons or not is also contested by some countries, but all the same we are all talking about safe navigation through the cyberspace for economic activity, uh, growth of economies, and social interaction that the countries need to engage in. Uh, because the internet, the way it has emerged, it is largely encompassing all kinds of our life. For example, it acts as a town square where we engage in politics and speech, and also as a part of Main Street where we engage in shopping, e commerce. And of course, this kind of a cyberspace also has its own dark alleys where crime is conducted, and in fact, secret corridors also where economic and military espionage takes place. And finally, it is the frontier of the battlefields, because tomorrow's wars are being projected to be conducted through cyberspace, and cyber will have a major component. In fact, Secretary East noted that it has emerged as a fifth commons, fifth battle space. But cyberspace is a game changer in the sense that it is a borderless. It is only standard protocols and connectivity which can allow us to connect anybody with the TCP/IP kind of a platform on any machine which he has can connect to the internet and be there. And but unlike the other spaces, global commons, the cyberspace as a global commons is expanding because the bandwidth is under our control. We can lay any amount of undersea cables and create overline connectivity through wireless networks and so on. So the bandwidth is continuously expanding, which means the cyberspace is expanding, and so is the usage. So if we create more and more applications, and today's world is what we talk about apps, so more and more applications being created, there's a continuous expansion of the cyberspace. And then the vulnerabilities in all the platforms, whether it is PCs, mobiles, servers, and so on, all kinds of software, they are all known. The way historically the entire systems have developed, there are gaping holes, they are being plugged in, but all the same they continue. So these vulnerabilities in all platforms are known, and they're available once again on the internet. So anyone can take them on and exploit them with whatever intent they have. Uh, Critical infrastructures of nations, and we can define any amount of list. It is financial, water distribution, power generation, power distribution, banking, and the entire financial sector, and so on. E-governance, military dependent upon the logistics supplies through the cyberspace. So all of these are critical activities and critical infrastructures. Over the last few years, we have, in the name of productivity gains, efficiency gains, and so on, we have connected more and more of the critical infrastructure management in terms of command and control through the internet. So here we have command and control systems which are removing people away from the control part and letting the internet mediate and take automated decisions based on whatever sensors are bringing back. So these sensors could then be exposed to vulnerabilities and critical infrastructure be impacted. Now this is something which is beginning to happen, and countries are trying to develop leads over others, march over others, that they can exploit this to put a country to a ransom kind of a thing. And there are many case studies which are already there. So what has emerged is that the protection of national ICT assets requires strategy, cybersecurity strategy at all levels, national levels, international cooperation. And as a fifth domain, we need to understand, because doctrines have come to the fore where countries, specifically the US, stated very clearly that if there's an attack in one of the four domains or in the cyberspace, they reserve their right to respond in any of the other four domains. That is, cyberspace is one of them. And China is not far behind. Russia and some other countries are also developing similar plans. Although, of course, reports talk about more than 120 countries, but then we do understand that there are different levels of development. Now, the point here is that uh, the economic growth of countries is highly dependent upon the cyberspace. Nations are growing. China claims that 26 to 28% of its economic growth is as a result of ICT, and a major part of that is through the internet in particular. And if you look at internet in particular, or cyberspace specifically, every country is trying to see that they have targets of some 1.5 to 3% of their GDP coming from internet, not ICT, specifically as internet. So we are trying to grapple with that. So here is policy making or the outlook towards cyberspace, which has to balance the economic interest with national security. Again, something not unique because we have heard about maritime security as well. But there are some characteristics which make it different from other spaces. Clearly, the cyberspace is offense dominant. That is, you have to defend your space all the time, whereas the offender has to succeed only once. And he is trying to attack you from the cozy confines of his own home or his own office anywhere in the world. Now, that is what makes cyberspace unique. While the offense is the dominant part, attribution is difficult. The way technology has developed, you cannot really pinpoint who has attacked, where from the attack has taken place. So there are a whole range of paths and so on, proxy servers in between, which determine the path, and they take you up to a certain point. Beyond that, again, the trail goes blank. So you can't attribute. So while we talk about cyber wars and cyber other issues, it is not clear of when you can declare that some kind of war has started, somebody is attacking you, and then you can't, if at all it has started, you can't declare when it has come to an end. And then the added problem is that it is the same tools that we use for strengthening our networks, vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, and so on, which we call normally as audit tools. So with those tools, we try to make our networks stronger, but it is the same tools which are used for conducting crimes, and the same tools for conducting espionage, and finally it is the very same tools which we can now call as weapons, which are used to conduct wars. Now, witness the recent case of North Korea versus US, the Sony hack, Sony studio. While Obama is on record having stated that North Korea has done it, but there are analysts who believe that it is not correct. So we do not know whether it was the North Koreans who actually attacked Sony studio, or it was simple hackers. Now this problem is something which is continuing to be there, and we have to see how do we really confront it. But at the same time, the cyber attacks, if you see their outcomes, they are in cybercrimes. Many of the recent attacks on companies like Target, JP Morgan Chase, and so on. In fact, Target is the first case where the CEO had to go. He was sacked. It's a huge corporation, and the company is still facing almost $1.2 billion worth of suits, class action suits, and so on, where the privacy and data of individuals has been compromised. So we are seeing the impact of cyberspace and the successful attacks in cyberspace having a greater impact on individuals, on economies, on companies and national infrastructure. Companies can close down as a result of such attacks. Banks can be wiped out as a result of such successful attacks. So the impact here is much more felt on a day-to-day basis, unlike what you would see in other commons. And then espionage. The Americans have charged China, 5 of their PLA officers, for conducting cyber espionage and stealing away secrets from Westinghouse, United States Steel, Alcoa for commercial advantage. Various figures are put on that, $1 trillion or so on the loss of intellectual property. But then what have the Chinese done? Surely they will not hand over the people to America to stand trial in American courts in the state of, in the city of Philadelphia. But the Chinese, on the other hand, have taken whatever has come out of Snowden revelations, and I'm sure they were aware of that also, as the espionage which the Americans have been conducting in the name of counterterrorism. But is it confined to counterterrorism? Probably not, because the stated approach or stated doctrine is that collect all the data. All of us are using many of the American service providers, Facebook, Google, and so on, Yahoo, all of those platforms we are using. So 75% of the global usage patterns of internet lands up on American servers, and also nearly 70% of 75% of the global traffic passes through the undersea cables again. So which they are sniffing and collecting all that data. So with all the data which is being collected without first doing any targeted surveillance, everybody's data is there. And we have heard about Angela Merkel, Dilma Rousseff, and so on protesting against the privacy violations. UN passing a resolution in December 2013 on the right to privacy in the digital age. But the fact of the matter is, are the Chinese right? Is there a US-China standoff in cyberspace, and China stating that the data that you are collecting gives you advantage in trade negotiations? So is it equivalent to the kind of direct espionage which China may be conducting, or what it is coming out? And let me tell you also that the reports which come out are not with a tinge.
One moment.
Okay, 1 minute. So with this kind of a thing, we are talking about trust in cyberspace is a major casualty. But what we need to do is to look at nations to take steps on structure for cybersecurity, education awareness, best practices, early watch and warning center, security workforce development, law enforcement agencies to be trained in cybercrime investigations, and all of that. And now in all these, there is a need for global cooperation, because if the space is borderless, how do we handle such crimes and such kind of activities, and how to enhance trust in emerging technologies such as cloud computing? So I think there's a need for public-private partnership, and specifically at the India-ASEAN level, because the century now or the next decade belongs to Asia in terms of growth. All the indicators, whether you look at internet penetration, e-commerce, business to consumer, and so on, you look at the figures. I will not get into that. The figures are dominant compared to North America, Europe, and others. We are going far ahead, which means the attacks also will be suffering much more. So there's a need for cooperation amongst ASEAN countries at the level of law enforcement agencies, at the level of CERTs, information sharing analysis centers, best practices frameworks of the kind that DSCI develops, future strategies on focus on R&D, and promoting cybersecurity products which come out of ASEAN countries, and probably holding an ASEAN cybersecurity conference every year. So these are some of the steps which I think we need to take to navigate through the cyberspace for the growth of economy of our countries and be secure. Thank you.